The chamber was silent, but not empty. It hung in open space, a ring of cold metal and light, orbiting a dead moon. Thousands of alien delegates watched from their platforms. Millions more watched through live broadcasts across the galaxy. At the center stood one human. Earth's leader was restrained by a field of pale energy. No chains, no guards, just light holding flesh in place. The aliens had decided this was more civilized. They had also decided this was the end. The tribunal speaker rose, its voice calm and sharp. It spoke of laws older than stars, of balance, of order, of how humanity had violated all three. The human listened without moving. Observers noticed something strange. The human was not shaking, not crying, not begging. Many expected fear. Some hoped for it. Instead, the human looked calm. The speaker finished its sentence and asked the final question, the one that had been asked in every execution like this for thousands of years. Do you have any last words? Cameras zoomed in. Sensors watched for lies, threats, hidden signals. The human raised their head. Their faces showed no anger, no hate, only certainty. They spoke one short sentence, in simple human words. Words the translators struggled to process. Then you have already lost. The chamber froze. Some aliens laughed. Others clicked in confusion. The tribunal speaker paused, then dismissed the words as meaningless defiance. The sentence was not translated for most of the galaxy. It did not need to be. The execution began. Light collapsed inward. Energy surged. The human body vanished in a clean, perfect flash. No blood, no scream, no mess, just absence. Earth's leader was gone. For 3 seconds, the galaxy was silent. Then the tribunal announced the verdict was complete. Humanity was declared broken, leaderless, contained. The broadcast ended. Celebrations began in distant worlds. Analysts spoke confidently about the future. Human trade routes would collapse. Human colonies would surrender. Earth itself would fracture into chaos. The execution had worked before. It always did. But something went wrong. On Earth, every screen went black at the same moment. Not from damage. Not from attack. From shutdown. Military channels closed. Civil networks went silent. Even emergency beacons stopped transmitting. Earth did not scream. Earth did not beg. Earth went quiet. In the outer systems, long-forgotten satellites shifted their orbits for the first time in centuries. Deep under planetary crusts, sealed vaults opened. Old reactors, built with no markings and no names, began to warm. Across human space, a signal spread, too old to trace, too simple to stop. It carried no words. Only confirmation. The line was broken. Alien monitoring stations noticed small things at first. Energy readings that did not match known human technology. Ships vanishing from tracking grids without using jump gates. Gravitational ripples where nothing should exist. Analysts dismissed it as panic errors. They were wrong. In a dark region between stars, a human fleet moved without lights. Holes blacker than space. Engines silent by design. No flags. No signals. These ships were not new. They were waiting. Commanders stood in quiet halls, watching data flow across ancient screens. No speeches were given. No orders shouted. Every human there already knew what to do. The execution footage replayed once, then was archived. Not for rage. For memory. One commander looked at the final frame, the human leader's calm face before the light took them. The commander closed their eyes. Begin, they said. Far away, the tribunal prepared its next announcement. They planned to explain how order had been restored. How the galaxy was safe again. They did not see the shadows moving toward them. They did not understand the silence. They had killed one human and believed it was enough. They never asked why humanity had allowed their leader to stand alone. And they never realized the truth until it was far too late. The execution was not the end. It was the signal. And somewhere in the dark, the storm began to wake. The galaxy moved on quickly. It always did. Across thousands of systems, the execution of Earth's leader was filed away as a resolved incident. Another unstable species corrected. Another lesson reinforced. The tribunal's symbols faded from news cycles and were replaced by trade disputes, border skirmishes, and entertainment feeds. Humanity became a footnote. In the grand archive of sentient civilizations, Earth's status was quietly changed. From developing power to contained species. Then, within a single cycle, to something worse. Irrelevant. Historians debated how it had taken humans so long to fail. Analysts mocked their emotional politics. Commentators replayed the execution and laughed at the final words. They always speak bravely before death, one scholar said. It is a weakness. No one noticed that no human voice responded afterward. Not one protest. Not one threat. Not one plea for mercy. Entire communication channels that once buzzed with human traffic stayed dark. Trade stations near human borders reported nothing. No arrivals. No distress calls. No movement. At first, the galaxy assumed chaos. Then weeks passed. Then months. Human colonies did not fragment. They did not beg for aid. They did not collapse into war like so many younger species had after losing leadership. They simply stopped. Alien merchants complained about lost profits. Human goods vanished from markets. Rare materials once mined by human hands no longer arrived. Prices rose. Systems dependent on human trade suffered quietly. Still, no one worried. Because silence, in galactic history, always meant extinction. Military observers ran standard scans of the Sol system. Earth still orbited its star. Cities still glowed faintly on the night side. No asteroid impacts. No visible warfare. Residual automation, analysts concluded. Leftover systems running without purpose. They were wrong. Deep within alien space, war academies taught new officers about humanity. The lessons were brief. Humans were adaptive, instructors said, but undisciplined, divided, too emotional. Cadets nodded and moved on. No one taught them about patience. No one taught them about fear learned through history. No one taught them what a species becomes after surviving its own near extinction. In forgotten corners of space, relic monitoring arrays still watched human territory. Old machines with outdated sensors, barely maintained. Even they reported nothing alarming. No fleet movements. No energy spikes. No jump signatures. Perfect quiet. Then small things began to happen. A listening post near a dead star sent an automated error report before going offline. Technicians blamed solar interference. A patrol ship vanished along a trade corridor bordering former human space. Its last transmission mentioned sensor ghosts. The crew was listed as lost to hyperspace malfunction. An unmanned relay station recorded a gravitational distortion that lasted less than a second. Too brief to analyze. Too strange to classify. Each incident, alone, meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern no one was looking for. Because the galaxy was busy congratulating itself. The tribunal released a statement praising unity and stability. They declared that the example of Earth would discourage future resistance from minor species. Applause echoed through council halls. That applause never reached human ears. On Earth, cities still glowed, but not from life as the galaxy understood it. Beneath those lights, humanity worked. There were no speeches, no public broadcasts, no calls for revenge. There were only instructions, passed through channels so old even humans barely remembered building them. The message that followed the execution had been short. The line is broken. Every human government, every colony, every hidden installation knew what it meant. Emergency authority dissolved instantly. Power did not centralize. It spread. Civilian factories shifted production without announcement. Mining operations dug deeper than ever before. Shipyards sealed their doors and turned inward. Children were sent underground. Not in panic, but in practice. Elders told stories that had not been told in generations. Stories of a time when humanity had nearly destroyed itself. Of how close the species had come to vanishing long before it ever reached the stars. Those stories ended the same way. With a promise. Never again. In orbital shadows around distant stars, structures that were never meant to be found powered up. No flags marked them. No databases listed them. They were built before humanity joined the galactic community. Built when humanity believed the universe would be hostile. And they had been right. Human commanders gathered in silence aboard vessels that did not officially exist. The ships did not use known drives. They did not obey common physics. They did not need to. These commanders did not celebrate the coming war. They did not speak of revenge. They spoke of responsibility. Because humanity had learned something the galaxy had not. Power does not come from ruling others. It comes from refusing to let injustice repeat. Far from Earth, on a tribunal world, a junior analyst hesitated over a data stream. The numbers made no sense. Energy readings that appeared and vanished between scans. Shadows where ships should not be. The analyst reported it. The supervisor dismissed it. Human fear, they said. The echoes of a dying species. The analyst watched the data anyway. The shadows grew closer. Still, no message came from Earth. No declaration of war. No ultimatum. No warning. The galaxy mistook restraint for weakness. Mistook planning for surrender. Mistook silence for death. By the time the first true alarm sounded, it was already too late to trace where it began. Because humanity did not announce its return. It did not demand recognition. It did not ask the galaxy to remember them. It simply moved. And when the stars finally noticed, they would realize the truth the executioners never understood. Humanity had not gone quiet because it was broken. Humanity had gone quiet because it was deciding. The storm was no longer waking. It was already on the move. No one in the galaxy questioned the smile. That was the mistake. When the execution footage was archived, analysts focused on the moment of death. The energy surge. The clean erasure. The efficiency. That was what mattered to them. The smile appeared for less than a second. It was dismissed as courage, or denial, or a simple human emotion. No one paused the frame long enough to understand it. On Earth, that single image was burned into memory, not as inspiration, as confirmation. The leader's name was spoken one final time in sealed chambers across human space. Not in public, not with ceremony, only among those who already knew the truth. They were never meant to survive the tribunal. They were meant to finish something. Centuries earlier, long before humans were welcomed into the galactic community, Earth had faced a different fear. Not invasion, not extinction by force, but erased by decision. Human scientists, historians, and military thinkers had studied the stars and reached the same conclusion. Any galaxy with rules would eventually choose who mattered, and someone would always be judged expendable. So humanity prepared, not for war, for betrayal. The plan had no official name. It never appeared in records. It was passed down as a responsibility, not a strategy. Each generation hoped it would never be needed. Each generation updated it anyway. At the center of that plan was a simple idea. If humanity ever lost its voice in the galaxy, its actions would speak instead. The leader who stood before the tribunal was not chosen for strength or popularity. They were chosen because they would understand what their death meant. They carried the final authority, authority that could not be revoked, traced, or overridden. The moment their life ended, that authority dissolved outward, fracturing into millions of independent permissions. Humanity no longer needed permission to act. On Earth, the signal spread without sound. Power grids rebalanced themselves. Satellites shifted alignment. Deep-sea cables rerouted traffic through pathways no one outside humanity could monitor. There was no single command center anymore. There were thousands. Every city became a node. Every ship is a decision-maker. Every human is a participant. The galaxy had always believed decapitation ended resistance. Humans had learned the opposite. In the quiet of underground shelters, people watched the execution replay, not on public screens, but on raw, unfiltered feeds. Children asked why the leader smiled. Parents did not soften the answer. Because it worked, they said. Factories once used for civilian goods converted themselves overnight. Not into weapons alone, but into infrastructure, support, repair, supply. Humanity had learned long ago that endurance won wars more often than firepower. In distant colonies, farmers changed crops to feed fleets instead of cities. Engineers dismantled monuments to harvest rare metals. No one protested. No one panicked. They had rehearsed this. In hidden shipyards beyond charted space, vessels slid from construction cradles older than some civilizations. Their hulls bore scars from tests never recorded. Their systems ran on principles the galaxy had abandoned as impossible. Not because they failed, because they were dangerous. Human designers had kept them anyway. In one such vessel, a commander stood alone, staring at a hologram of the tribunal chamber. The image froze on the smile. The commander remembered meeting the leader years earlier. No cameras, no witnesses. Only a question had been asked. If they kill you, the commander had said, are you sure this will be enough? The leader nodded. It has to be, they replied. Because if it isn't, then we don't deserve to survive. That memory lingered as the commander turned away. Orders flowed, not shouted, not centralized. Each fleet received the same directive, phrased carefully. Prevent repetition. That was all. No mention of revenge. No mention of conquest. Just prevention. The first human actions did not look like war. Trade routes shifted without explanation. Certain systems found their jump gates malfunctioning. Not destroyed, just unavailable. Data networks experienced errors that forced them to rely on older, simpler protocols. Protocols humans understood better than anyone else. Small conflicts between alien factions ended suddenly when their targeting systems failed at the same time. Still, no one blamed humanity. Why would they? Humanity was irrelevant. On a tribunal world, scholars debated whether to remove Earth entirely from historical archives to make room for newer species. A junior archivist hesitated again and again over the deletion command. Something felt wrong. They reviewed sensor data from the execution chamber one last time. That was when they saw it. A spike. Not from the execution beam. From a human. A signal that lasted less than a fraction of a second. Too brief to register as communication. Too weak to be a weapon. But deliberate. The archivist's hands trembled. They filed a report marking an anomaly. It vanished into bureaucracy. Elsewhere, human fleets crossed invisible lines the galaxy had drawn centuries earlier. Lines marked forbidden by ancient treaties. No alarms sounded. Those treaties were enforced by systems that no longer worked. Because humans had built parts of them. Long ago, humanity had been invited to help maintain galactic infrastructure. It had been considered safe. A way to integrate a young species. Humans had learned everything. And quietly written contingencies into places no one looked anymore. As fleets advanced, they did not broadcast warnings. They did not hide either. They moved openly, but through shadows the galaxy had trained itself to ignore. The silence continued. That silence began to frighten those who noticed it. Because extinction was loud. The collapse was messy. Humanity was neither. The truth, spreading slowly among the few who paid attention, was simple and terrifying. Earth's leader had not faced death as a victim. They had faced it as the final switch in a system designed to survive exactly this moment. The smile was not defiant. It was a relief. Because the burden had passed. And humanity, patient, underestimated, and finally unbound, was no longer waiting to be judged. It was already acting. The galaxy would not understand that truth until it felt the consequences. And by then, there would be no undoing what the smile had begun. The first battle was not announced. There was no declaration of war, no broadcast, no warning. It began in a system so unimportant that even its name had been shortened in official records. A minor junction, a place where patrols passed through out of habit, not fear. That was why it was chosen. Alien sensors detected the disturbance first, a slow bending of space, like a breath being held too long. Technicians watched the readings climb, then flatten, then vanish. No jump signature, one of them said, confused. No distortion exit either, another replied. Then the stars went wrong. Not dark, not bright. Wrong. Light bent at angles that hurt to look at. Distances no longer made sense. Objects appeared closer than they were, then farther, then suddenly present. Human ships arrived. They did not tear space open like conventional fleets. They slid into existence, as if the universe had briefly forgotten they were not supposed to be there. No alarm screamed, because nothing in the databases matched what the sensors were seeing. The patrol ships turned, weapons charging, shields rising. Training took over. Procedures executed perfectly. It did not matter. The first human strike did not hit a ship. It hit space. A focused pulse spread outward, invisible and silent. Alien shields flared once, and then collapsed, not shattered, but unmade. As if the concept of shielding had been temporarily removed from reality. Weapons followed. Not beams. Not missiles. Effects. One patrol vessel simply lost cohesion. Its hull did not explode. It separated, molecule by molecule, drifting apart like dust in slow motion. Another ship tried to flee. Its engines engaged. Nothing happened. The drive core was still there. The energy was still flowing. But the ship no longer existed in a place where motion worked the same way. It stayed still as the universe moved around it. The engagement lasted less than 40 seconds. No human ship was damaged. No human voice was heard. When it ended, the system was silent again. Then something new happened. The human ships left. Not in pursuit. Not in triumph. They vanished as cleanly as they had arrived, leaving behind wreckage that could not be explained and sensor data that contradicted itself. The patrol never sent a distress call, because it never had time to understand it was under attack. Hours later, when command noticed the patrol had missed its check-in, an investigation was ordered. By the time a fleet arrived, there was nothing left to fight. Only evidence that should not exist. The galaxy reacted the way it always did at first, with denial. Analysts blamed experimental weapons, pirate technology, rare natural phenomena, anything except the obvious. Because the obvious was terrifying. Because the obvious suggested that someone had solved problems the galaxy had given up on centuries ago. Meanwhile, the attacks continued. Not everywhere. Not randomly. Humanity struck with restraint so precise it confused even its victims. Supply hubs were disabled, but not destroyed. Command ships were neutralized while escorts were left intact and drifting. Communication relays failed in ways that forced local commanders to rely on outdated systems. Humanity was not burning territory. It was removing advantages. Alien fleets found themselves blind, deaf, and slow. Their formations still existed. Their numbers were still vast. But they were suddenly fighting a war without coordination, without certainty, without time. Human commanders watched the results with cold focus. Every engagement was recorded, analyzed, and adjusted. No victory was celebrated. This was not about proving strength. This was about ending threats permanently. The galaxy had always believed humans relied on numbers and emotion, that their technology was clever but fragile, that their tactics were aggressive and reckless. The truth was worse. Humanity had studied alien doctrine for centuries. I learned every pattern, every assumption, and then built weapons specifically designed to break those assumptions. Where aliens used shields, humans attacked causality. Where aliens used centralized command, humans erased synchronization. Where aliens relied on prediction, humans introduced uncertainty itself. In one system, an alien battle group engaged what it thought was a single human cruiser. The sensors showed it clearly. One target, one signature. They fired everything. The cruiser did not evade. It split, not physically, but in probability. Each shot struck a version of the ship that no longer existed by the time impact should have occurred. The real vessel remained untouched, observing from a future the attackers could not see. The battle group surrendered in confusion. Humanity did not accept it. Instead, their weapons shut down every ship simultaneously. Life support remained active. No one died. A single message was transmitted, human language only. Remember this feeling. Then the humans left. Fear began to spread faster than official reports could suppress it. Commanders whispered. Scientists argued. Old veterans stared at data and felt something they had not felt since their first battles. Uncertainty. On tribunal worlds, emergency meetings were called. The same leaders who had ordered Earth's execution now demanded answers. What are they using? How did we miss this? Why didn't they attack us directly? No one had answers. Because the truth did not fit their worldview. Humanity had not been racing to match galactic technology. Humanity had been exploring directions the galaxy had abandoned out of fear. Time manipulation that did not break reality, but bent it. Energy weapons that targeted laws instead of objects. Ships designed to function even if space itself became hostile. These were not tools of conquest. They were tools of survival. And now they were being used with purpose. The first confirmed tribunal fleet engagement happened days later. A massive force, confident in its numbers, moved to secure a border system. Human ships met them openly. This time, alarms did sound. This time, the galaxy watched. The battle unfolded like nothing in recorded history. Human vessels moved through formations without collision, as if paths opened just for them. Alien weapons fired, struck, and failed in ways that defied explanation. One by one, the tribunal fleet's ships went dark. Not destroyed, disconnected. Their systems still existed, but no longer communicated with each other. No shared time reference. No shared reality. The fleet collapsed into chaos. Then, for the first time, humanity spoke. A single broadcast, transmitted on all frequencies. Third-person observers later described the voice as calm, measured, almost gentle. This ends now, it said. Withdrawal. The tribunal fleet did not. They fired again. Human weapons responded. This time, ships vanished. Not exploded. Not disabled. Removed. Space folded inward and smoothed over, as if the ships had never been there at all. The galaxy gasped. This was not war as it understood it. This was rewriting the battlefield itself. When the battle ended, the human fleet remained. Still silent. Still untouched. Then they did something no one expected. They withdrew. They did not advance on the tribunal worlds. They did not press the advantage. They left the galaxy breathing, shaking, and alive. Confusion turned into fear. Fear turned into realization. Humanity was not trying to win quickly. It was demonstrating something. Power, yes, but also control. Because the most frightening weapon humanity had revealed was not its technology. It was its restraint. They could have erased fleets. They chose not to. They could have shattered worlds. They did not. The message was clear to those capable of understanding it. This is what happens when you cross a line. And this is what happens when the ones you underestimated decide that line must never be crossed again. Somewhere deep within human space, a commander watched the battle's final data scroll across their screen. They exhaled slowly. Phase complete, they said. The storm was no longer hidden. The galaxy had finally seen the weapons humanity had built in silence. And it was only the beginning. Victory did not feel like victory. Across human space, no cheers rose. No banners unfurled. No leaders stood before cameras to claim success. The battles had been flawless by every measurable standard. But humans had learned long ago that perfection in war carried a cost. And someone always paid for it. On Earth, the night lights dimmed, not from damage, but from choice. Power was rerouted to shipyards, data cores, and deep space relays. Cities learned to live in shadow again. It reminded the older generation of stories from before the stars, when survival meant sacrifice without applause. No one complained. They understood what silence meant now. In a subterranean facility beneath an ancient mountain range, a council of engineers sat around a table that had not been used in decades. Their screens showed fleet telemetry, energy consumption curves, and probability forecasts stretching years into the future. The numbers were unforgiving. Human technology could dominate the battlefield, but not forever. Every use of the weapon strained systems that could not be easily repaired. Some drives consumed materials that could never be replaced. Some effects left scars in space that took decades to heal. Humanity had built its storm carefully, but storms consumed fuel. A senior engineer spoke the truth no one wanted to hear. At this rate, she said, we can sustain superiority for 12 major engagements. After that, we start burning foundations. No one argued, because that had always been the plan. Humanity had never intended to fight a long war of conquest. They had designed their response to be decisive or fatal to themselves. Either the galaxy learned, or humanity burned out making sure it did. That was the price they had accepted long before the execution. In distant colonies, volunteers lined up not to fight, but to support. They signed up to many refineries that ran hotter than safety margins allowed, to crew supply ships that flew without escorts, to remain behind on stations that might become targets once fear turned to desperation. Families did not beg them to stay. They packed their bags. Parents hugged children longer than usual. Not dramatically, just tightly, because humans understood something the galaxy did not. Survival was not about winning. It was about choosing what mattered enough to lose for. In alien space, the mood shifted from fear to panic. Reports poured in, systems disabled, fleets neutralized, infrastructure compromised without a single human casualty confirmed. The tribunal tried to suppress the truth, but data leaked faster than censorship could contain it. Worlds that had once cheered Earth's execution now watched in silence. Some governments began to fracture, not from attack, but from doubt. If humans can do this, leaders whispered, what else have they chosen not to show? The first requests came quietly. An alien trade consortium rerouted ships away from tribunal space and toward human borders. They transmitted a message, formal, cautious, desperate. They offered cooperation, protection, anything. Humanity did not respond. Not yet, because another cost was being paid. On a human ship deep in contested space, a drive core failed during a precision maneuver. The failure was contained. The ship did not explode, but the drive could not be shut down safely. The captain understood immediately. There was no panic, no raised voices. The crew executed emergency procedures with calm efficiency. Escape pods launched, every one except the captain's. The ship altered course slightly and vanished into a controlled distortion, taking the failing drive with it. The captain was not listed as lost in action. They were listed as fulfilled. Back on Earth, a name was added to a wall no one outside humanity knew existed. No rank, no story, just acknowledgement. The galaxy would never see these moments. It would only see the results. Humanity's restraint began to crack the old order faster than destruction ever could. Minor species, long oppressed by tribunal policies, started sharing intelligence with human channels they barely understood. They spoke of secret prisons, of executions hidden from public record, of entire cultures erased quietly, efficiently. Human analysts listened, and their resolve hardened. This was not about Earth's leader anymore. This was about a pattern. The tribunal had not made a mistake. It had revealed itself. Human fleets adjusted priorities. Targets were selected not by strategic value alone, but by moral weight. Facilities tied to oppression failed first. Enforcement fleets found themselves stranded without command. Still, humanity did not announce itself as savior. They did not promise safety. They simply removed danger. On one tribunal world, a governor watched as their planetary defense grid shut down without warning. No human ships appeared. No demands followed. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing happened. The population did not riot. They waited, because waiting had become the most frightening thing of all. In a hidden human command chamber, a debate finally broke the silence. "How far do we go?" one officer asked. "We're changing the galaxy. We need to decide what comes after." The room was quiet. Then another officer spoke. "There is no after," they said. "Only prevention." Humanity was not trying to rule the stars. It was trying to make sure no one ever again believed execution was governance. Still, the cost continued. Resources dwindled. Systems aged. The storm could not rage forever. Human leaders, no longer centralized, no longer titled, knew the clock was ticking. They had to end this before the galaxy forced them to escalate. Because escalation meant becoming the very thing they were fighting. The turning point came unexpectedly. A tribunal-aligned fleet jumped into a system sheltering a minor species known for its silence and obedience. The fleet issued an ultimatum: surrender your orbital infrastructure or be corrected. The species complied. It did not matter. The fleet began orbital bombardment anyway. Human sensors saw it. For the first time, there was no debate. Human ships arrived mid-strike. They did not disable it. They did not warn. They erased the attacking fleet completely. Not a single vessel remained. No survivors. The message was unmistakable. The galaxy felt it. A line had been crossed, not by humanity, but by those who refused to learn. Across countless worlds, leaders understood something fundamental had changed. Humans were willing to pay an unbearable price to stop this cycle. And that made them unstoppable. Because an enemy who fears loss can be threatened. An enemy who has already accepted loss cannot. As the echoes of that annihilation spread, more messages arrived at human listening posts. No demands, not threats, requests, for guidance, for protection, for rules. Humanity had not sought responsibility, but responsibility had found them anyway. In the dark between stars, a human fleet adjusted course, not toward a tribunal stronghold, but toward a cluster of vulnerable worlds now exposed by the collapsing old order. A commander watched the trajectory update and felt the weight settle in their chest. This was the true cost. Not the ships, not the lives, but the knowledge that once you prove you can stop the storm, you are expected to hold it back forever. And somewhere, far away, the tribunal finally understood what it had unleashed. Humanity was no longer fighting for revenge. It was fighting because it could not allow itself to stop. And that realization terrified the galaxy more than any weapon ever could. The tribunal had ruled the galaxy for so long that most species no longer questioned its existence. It was simply there, ancient, vast, and unquestioned. A structure older than many stars, layered with laws written by civilizations that no longer existed. It claimed to be neutral. It claimed to be just. It claimed to speak for everyone. For the first time in recorded galactic history, it felt afraid. Emergency sessions were called in chambers designed to project authority. Towering pillars of light flared brighter than usual. Delegates arrived surrounded by guards, encryption fields, and ritual symbols meant to display strength. None of it helped. Because strength only mattered when it was believed. And belief was collapsing. Reports flooded in faster than they could be filtered. Fleets gone. Systems silent. Enforcement units neutralized without explanation. Species once obedient now refusing tribunal orders. Or worse, ignoring them completely. Humanity had not attacked the tribunal directly. That was the most unsettling part. They're isolating us, one delegate hissed. They're cutting away our reach. Another slammed a limb against the floor. Then why haven't they come for us? The question echoed through the chamber. No one answered. Because the answer was obvious and terrifying. Humanity was letting the tribunal watch. For centuries, the tribunal had believed visibility was controlled. That being seen was the same as being obeyed. Humanity was proving the opposite. Outside the chamber, something unprecedented happened. A human signal arrived. Not an intrusion. Not a hack. An invitation. The message appeared simultaneously on every tribunal interface, written in perfect legal syntax, translated flawlessly into every known language. It contained no threats, no demands, only a statement. The execution of Earth's leader violated your own highest law. Attached was evidence, not human testimony. Tribunal records, ancient rulings, precedents buried under millennia of amendments. Forgotten clauses that forbade the execution of a species representative without unanimous consent from all affected civilizations. Consent that had never been requested. Silence followed. The chamber erupted. Some delegates shouted denial. Others demanded counterarguments. Legal experts rushed to verify the claim. They found it. It was real. Humanity had not only survived the tribunal, it had outgrown it. The signal continued. You are now in violation of your mandate. Stand down. The words burned deeper than any weapon. Stand down. The tribunal had never been told that before. Some delegates demanded immediate retaliation. They ordered remaining fleets to converge on human space. They insisted on strength, on example, on punishment. Those orders never reached their destinations. The fleets could not coordinate. The infrastructure no longer listened. Humanity had not destroyed the tribunal's power. It had removed its ability to use it. For the first time, the tribunal was just a room full of frightened beings arguing with no one obeying them. Then the human fleets appeared. Not in orbit. Not in attack formation. They positioned themselves at precise distances around the tribunal's system. Visible, undeniable, calm. Millions across the galaxy watched the feeds. This time, humanity did not hide. This time, humanity let itself be seen. The ships did not aim weapons. They did not raise shields. They simply waited. The tribunal's speaker rose, voice trembling despite centuries of training. You accuse us, it said, yet you commit acts of war. The human response came instantly. Measured. Clear. We removed your ability to harm, the voice said. You chose to define harm as governance. That sentence would be studied for generations. The tribunal tried a different tactic. Diplomacy. They offered negotiations. Apologies carefully phrased to avoid responsibility. Promises of reform written by committees that had never known urgency. Humanity listened, then replied. Too late. The message did not carry anger. Only finality. Because humanity had learned something during its silence. Systems that require reform after exposure are already broken. The tribunal attempted one last move. They authorized a classified protocol, an ancient failsafe designed to assert control in times of crisis. It drew power from distributed nodes across the galaxy, forcing compliance through infrastructure dependence. The command was issued. Nothing happened. Human engineers had discovered the protocol centuries earlier while helping maintain the system. They had not disabled it. They had replaced it. A new signal echoed outward from the tribunal world. Not human, not alien, but universal. This authority is revoked. Across the galaxy, enforcement systems shut down permanently. Execution chambers powered off. Control codes expired. The tribunal screamed. The galaxy breathed. For the first time in thousands of years, the tribunal could not enforce its will. And then came the moment no one expected. Humanity opened a channel. Not to the tribunal. To the galaxy. Every species. Every world. Every colony. The broadcast showed no flags. No leaders. No symbols of power. Only a human voice. Third-person observers later struggled to describe it. It was not commanding. It was not pleading. It was honest. Humanity does not seek to replace the tribunal, the voice said. We will not rule you. We will not judge you. Murmurs spread across star systems. Then the voice continued. But we will no longer allow systems that decide who deserves to exist. The execution footage played, not as propaganda, as evidence. Then something unexpected followed. Footage of other executions, other species, other leaders, other erasures. Evidence humanity had collected quietly, patiently, during its years of silence. The tribunal's crimes were no longer abstract. They were undeniable. The broadcast ended with a single statement. We will withdraw in one cycle. What replaces the tribunal is your choice. The human fleets did not move. They did not threaten. They simply waited. Across the galaxy, panic turned into debate, then into discussion, then into something dangerous to old power. Hope. Species long silenced began to speak. Alliances formed overnight. Emergency councils convened, not under tribunal authority, but mutual agreement. For the first time, governance was not imposed. It was negotiated. In the tribunal world, the delegates realized the truth. Humanity was not overthrowing them. Humanity was making them irrelevant. And irrelevance was a death sentence they could not appeal. One by one, tribunal members attempted to escape. Some succeeded. Most did not. Not because humans stopped them, because no one was willing to help them anymore. The galaxy had seen behind the curtain. In human space, commanders watched the feeds in silence. No one celebrated. No one smiled. They understood what had just happened. Power had shifted, not into human hands, but away from tyranny. And that was far more dangerous. Because now the galaxy would look to humanity, not as rulers, but as the species that had proven it was possible to say no. As the one-cycle deadline approached, human fleets began to withdraw exactly as promised. They left behind no occupation forces, no bases, no demands, only a galaxy forced to decide what it would become without an executioner to hide behind. In the darkness between stars, a human commander spoke quietly to no one in particular. We've done it, they said. Another answered, voice heavy. No, they replied. We've started it. Because the tribunal was gone. But what replaced it would decide whether humanity's storm was remembered as salvation, or as the moment the galaxy learned how fragile order truly was. And that uncertainty lingered like thunder long after the last human ship slipped back into shadow. The tribunal's silence was louder than its rule had ever been. Across the galaxy, systems that once waited for orders now waited for answers. For centuries, decision-making had flowed in one direction. Now it scattered outward, uneven and uncertain, like light through shattered glass. Emergency councils formed everywhere. Some worlds gathered in fear, others in hope, many in confusion. They all asked the same question in different ways. What now? Humanity had withdrawn exactly as promised. Their fleets vanished into shadowed corridors of space, leaving no occupation forces, no visible oversight. Only broken enforcement systems and a power vacuum too large to ignore. Some species panicked. Without the tribunal, old grudges resurfaced. Border disputes flared. Long-suppressed ambitions woke me up hungry. A few worlds began rapid militarization, terrified that someone, anyone, would take advantage of the chaos. Others looked toward Earth. They did not broadcast it openly. Not at first. But the requests came all the same. Quiet messages. Encrypted signals. Carefully worded appeals. They asked humanity to lead. To arbitrate. To enforce. To replace what had fallen. Human analysts intercepted every message. And declined every one. Not with hostility. With refusal. On Earth. In chambers that no longer carried titles or flags, human representatives gathered, not as rulers, but as caretakers of a dangerous moment. The screens around them showed the galaxy tearing and stitching itself back together in real time. This is where empires are born, one voice said quietly. Another answered just as softly. And this is where they decide they won't be. Humanity understood the temptation. They had the strength. They had the reach. They had the trust, fragile, but growing. It would be easy to step forward and declare order restored. Too easy. And that was exactly why they would not do it. Because humanity remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. No system that relies on one species to enforce morality survives the moment that species changes. And humans knew, better than anyone, that they were not immune to change. Instead of leadership, humanity offered something far stranger: tools. They released frameworks, open, decentralized systems for conflict resolution. Not laws, but processes. Not commands, but structures any species could adapt. They shared secure communication protocols immune to unilateral control. They published energy distribution models that prevented resource monopolies. They exposed the tribunal's old enforcement logic so everyone could see exactly how oppression had been automated. They did not tell the galaxy what to build. They showed it how not to repeat the past. Many rejected the offer. Some worlds wanted certainty, not responsibility. They tried to rebuild old hierarchies under new names. They crowned councils, appointed overseers, drafted execution clauses disguised as emergency authority. Those systems collapsed within cycles, because the galaxy had seen what hidden power looked like, and it no longer trusted it. Other worlds tried something different. They formed mutual defense pacts without central command, trade agreements without punishment clauses, courts whose rulings required consent from all affected parties, not enforced compliance. These systems were messy, slow, frustrating, but they worked. Not perfectly, just better. Humanity watched from a distance. They did not interfere when conflicts arose. They did not deploy fleets when treaties failed. They let the galaxy struggle, argue, adapt. It was painful to watch, but necessary, because growth without struggle was just dependency wearing a different mask. Still, not everyone accepted humanity's refusal to rule. A coalition of powerful systems, former tribunal beneficiaries, issued a joint declaration. They accused humanity of abandoning the galaxy after destabilizing it. They demanded human oversight, human enforcement, human accountability. The statement ended with a threat. If humanity did not assume responsibility, they would be held responsible anyway. Humanity responded with a single message: "We will not decide who deserves power." That was all. The coalition attempted to act. They moved fleets to seize key infrastructure once controlled by the tribunal. They justified it as temporary stabilization. Old language, recycled. Humanity did nothing. For 3 cycles, the coalition expanded. Then the smaller systems reacted. Trade routes closed. Resources dried up. Information networks rejected coalition access. Worlds refused docking rights. No fleets were fired upon. No weapons deployed. The coalition collapsed under the weight of collective refusal. The lesson spread faster than any broadcast. Power without consent was no longer sustainable. Fear began to fade. In its place, something unfamiliar grew: responsibility. Across countless worlds, young species studied the events surrounding Earth's leader. They did not focus on the execution itself anymore. They focused on what followed. In the silence. On the restraint. At the moment humanity could have ruled, and chose not to. New stories entered cultural memory. Not legends of conquest. But there are warnings. Never give one system the right to decide life and death. Never trade freedom for efficiency. Never assume strength means dominance. And always remember the species that refused a crown. On Earth, the cost of the storm finally came due. The ancient systems humanity had relied upon began to shut down permanently. Drives burned out. Infrastructure designed for one final stand reached the end of its lifespan. Humanity did not mourn the loss. Those systems had done their job. Now they were laid to rest. Earth's cities brightened again. Power flowed back into civilian life. Children returned to open skies. The underground shelters closed, not locked, but emptied. Humanity did not declare victory. It declared completion. One final message was sent, not to governments, not to councils, but archived openly where any species could find it. It contained no demands, only a record, a full, unfiltered account of what humanity had done. The mistakes, the near failures, the sacrifices, the moments when they almost chose differently. It ended with a single line: "We were afraid too." That honesty reshaped perception more than any weapon ever had. The galaxy slowly stabilized, not into peace, but into balance. Conflicts still happened. Disputes still turned violent at times. But execution stopped. Erasure stopped. No species vanished quietly ever again. Because everyone remembered what happened the last time a system tried to make disappearance look like order. Generations later, scholars would argue whether humanity saved the galaxy or merely forced it to confront itself. Humans never joined those debates. They returned to exploration. to creation, to the quiet work of building futures that did not depend on storms. Yet even as humanity stepped back, something had changed forever. Whenever a council argued too confidently, whenever a ruler spoke of necessity and sacrifice, whenever someone suggested that peace required someone else's silence, the galaxy remembered. Not the fleets, not the weapons, not the erased ships. It remembered a species that lost its leader, went quiet, and then reshaped the stars without claiming them. And that memory became the final safeguard. Because no matter how powerful a system grew, it now knew one thing with absolute certainty. If it crossed the line, humanity would not rule it. Humanity would stop it, and then walk away. Long after the last human fleet faded from public censors, the galaxy kept listening. It listened for commands that never came, for threats that never followed, for orders it had been trained, for centuries, to obey. None arrived. That absence became the loudest legacy of all. In classrooms carved from crystal and steel, alien children studied the fall of the tribunal. Their teachers did not begin with dates or laws. They began with a question. Why did the humans go quiet? The answers changed with age. The youngest said, because they were scared. The older ones said, because they were angry. The oldest students said nothing at first. Then they said, because they were thinking. That answer always marked the moment understanding began. The execution of Earth's leader was no longer taught as a punishment. It was taught as a mistake, so complete it reshaped history. Scholars replayed the footage again and again, not the moment of death, but the moment before it. The smile. It was analyzed in dozens of disciplines. Psychology, strategy, cultural memory. No single explanation satisfied everyone, until one historian finally wrote what many had felt but never said. The smile was not confidence, they wrote. It was closed. The galaxy learned what closure looked like when a species finished deciding who it was. Humanity never returned to galactic politics in the way many expected. They sent no permanent ambassadors. They held no permanent seats. They accepted no special authority. They participated only when invited, and left when they were no longer needed. This confused those who still believed power must be held to be real. Humans disagreed. They believed power was proven by the ability to let go. On Earth, memorials were built, not towering monuments, not statues carved to intimidate. Simple places, quiet places, names etched without rank or title. Earth's leader's name was there. So were many others. Visitors noticed something strange. There were no explanations carved into stone, no speeches preserved, no official story was declared, just a single sentence at the entrance, written in dozens of languages. This was the cost we accepted. Nothing more, nothing less. As decades passed, new threats emerged, as they always did. Small empires rose. Old hatreds flared. Some leaders, born long after the tribunal's fall, began to believe the warnings were exaggerated. They spoke of efficiency, of order, of necessary sacrifice. The galaxy watched them carefully. So did humanity. Humanity never intervened early. They waited, not out of cruelty, but because they understood something painfully well. A system that collapses under pressure was never stable to begin with. When one such empire attempted to reinstate execution as a tool of governance, targeting a minor species that could not defend itself, the galaxy reacted before humanity did. Trade ceased. Alliances dissolved. Navigation data vanished. The empire found itself isolated without a single shot fired. Then humanity sent one message. Only one. We are watching. That was enough. The execution stopped. The empire retracted its policies. Not because it feared human weapons, but because it feared becoming the next lesson. Humanity had become a shadow standard. Not rulers, not enforcers, but the reminder of what happened when lines were crossed. And shadows do not need to move to be felt. Far beyond the core systems, on a quiet world orbiting a red star, a human child listened to a story told by an elder. The child asked the same question every child eventually asked. Why didn't we take control when we could? The elder thought for a long moment, then answered simply, because control would have been easier than trust. The child frowned. Isn't it easier? The elder smiled, not like the leader had smiled, but gently. Easy ends faster, they said. That lesson spread, slowly but deeply, across species, across generations, across stars. The storm humanity had unleashed did not leave scars on worlds. It left scars on assumptions. It changed how power was discussed, how authority was justified, how silence was interpreted. Silence was no longer seen as weakness. It was seen as a warning. In the final records of the old tribunal, one corrupted data fragment survived. A partial transcript from the execution chamber, recovered long after the fall. It contained an unfiltered censor reading, something the tribunal systems had flagged but never understood. In the instant before Earth's leader died, every human-built system connected to the chamber spiked in activity. Not transmitting, acknowledging, as if an entire species had been holding its breath. And then, letting it go. That fragment became one of the most studied artifacts in galactic history. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it implied. Humanity had not reacted emotionally. It had reacted collectively, with discipline, with memory, with choice. Centuries later, explorers would map regions of space once considered forbidden. They would find remnants of ancient human technology, silent platforms, inert drives, folded space anchors drifting harmlessly. None were active. None were armed. All were empty. The explorers would realize something unsettling. Humanity had dismantled its storm, not because it could not be rebuilt, but because it did not need to exist anymore. The galaxy had learned that, more than any victory, was the point. In one final archive, maintained jointly by dozens of species, a summary of the era was recorded. The archivists debated its wording for years. In the end, they chose a sentence so simple it felt almost inadequate. They killed Earth's leader and discovered what humanity becomes when it is forced to remember who it is. No mention of fleets. No mention of weapons. Just consequence. And somewhere on Earth, under open skies, humans lived ordinary lives. They argued. They loved it. They made mistakes. They built things that would fail and tried again. They were not gods. They were not guardians. They were simply a species that had once been underestimated and had decided, together, never to allow that mistake to define the fate of anyone ever again. The stars did not celebrate them. The stars did not fear them. But the stars remembered. And that memory, quiet, heavy, unyielding, was the storm the galaxy would never forget.